at least 155 affected countries.
Decided to take increasingly aggressive steps to keep you
statistics.
And your family.
Over 180,000 cases around.
Scientists say social distancing can make a difference.
The JUAN de Fuca Marine Trail covers 47 kilometers of dense coastal forest. The trail carries alongside and over beautiful pebble beaches, waterfalls, suspension bridges, and the occasional pit of mud. Okay, there's lots of mud. What the The JUAN de Fuca sits on the southwestern coast of Vancouver Island, between Botanical Beach in Port Renfrew and China Beach, which is just up the coast from Souk. As the JUAN de Fuca Trail lies just south of the popular West Coast Trail, it often draws comparison. The trail is shorter than the 75-kilometer West Coast Trail, but in many ways it is just as challenging. The JUAN de Fuca Trail is rugged and has much more elevation gain and loss. Logistically, it is a lot easier to get onto the JUAN de Fuca, and it doesn't have any ladders to contend with. But one thing is for certain. Both trails share the same patented West Coast beauty. Having hiked the West Coast Trail in 2017 with my friend Jeff, I was itching to get back to the island to explore the JUAN de Fuca. The beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic in the spring of 2020 gave my wife Leanne and I the perfect excuse to go and practice this weird new thing they were calling social distancing. So we're a few hours into the trail, and so far so good. We got up bright and early this morning, dropped our car at the China Beach trailhead, and then caught the trail bus, which took us to Port Renfrew, so we could start at the Botanical Beach trailhead. And so far all is going well. We've enjoyed some beach walking and some walks on the trail. The only issue is this trip was a little bit last minute, and so we didn't do a lot of route planning or anything like that. We're just sort of doing things on the fly here, and we're not too sure which campsite we're trying to get to today. Little Coochie is probably the more logical one, but from everything we've read, Sombrio is definitely going to be a little bit nicer, beach camping instead of tucked away in the forest, so we'd like to get there if we can. The issue is that leaves us with an 18-kilometer day on day one, and with a bit of a later start taking the bus, I don't know that we're going to be able to pull that off, but we're definitely going to give it a try. Day one started out easy enough. We checked out the beautiful Botanical Beach and explored its tidal pools. As we made our way towards Parkinson Creek, however, the trail went inland and became progressively more difficult. We had read reviews talking about the mud. I had largely chalked that up to exaggeration and boasting by hikers who had just come off the trail. As we progressed along the trail, however, it quickly became clear there was indeed a lot of mud on the trail, which significantly slowed down our expected pace. Our pace slowed down so much we began to wonder if we'd make it to Sombrio Beach, which was our desired campsite for the first night. Thank goodness for gators. The mud is for real.
We made it to Little Quitchy around 5 p.m. with daylight slowly starting to fade.
Oh, thank goodness.
I was exhausted, dehydrated, and had developed a bad headache. I voted to set up campsite at the less than scenic Little Quitchy campsite and rest for the night. Leanne voted to push on to Sombrio Beach where the ocean views were. The tiebreaker went to Leanne, and we trudged on.
So after checking out Little Quitchy Creek, we decided to push on to Sombrio, even though it's already 5 o'clock and we're both knackered and sore. We just preferred to be on the beach. So we ate a bit, refueled our water, and we're gonna try and get there in the next 2 hours and do a late campsite setup.
Sombrio was only about 4 kilometers away, but we were covering a mere 2 kilometers an hour due to the technical nature of the trail and tired legs under our heavy packs. We reached a beach access point where we had the option of taking the scenic and faster beach route to Sombrio or taking the muddy, slow, and hilly inland route. The beach was our obvious preference, but this particular beach had a high tide cutoff point.
We're just gonna have to go and hope we don't get stuck. So basically, we're idiots.
The tide was coming in, and we knew from looking at the tide chart, we were pushing it close to being cut off by the rapidly rising waters. If that happened, we'd have to double back, get onto the inland trail, and would surely be hiking into the darkness. Tired and wanting to get to the campsite as soon as possible, we gambled and took the beach route, racing against the tide as fast as our tired legs would take us over the rocky shore.
Oh boy. Wet feet, wet feet, wet feet. It's one way to clean our shoes.
Luckily, our gamble paid off. Tired, wet, and hungry, we arrived at Sombrio Beach. After setting up our tent, we lit a fire, had some warm food, and a few sips of whiskey to raise our spirits. Apparently somewhat shell-shocked from day 1, we didn't break camp on day 2 of our trek until after 10 a.m. We had breakfast, coffee, filled our water bottles, and then putzed around Sombrio Beach. The good news was we had covered roughly 37% of the trail on day 1, allowing us to take an easier pace from here on out. We made sure to check out the incredible waterfall tucked inside a slot canyon just off the beach. It was the kind of waterfall you might expect to find in Maui, and was like no other waterfall I've seen in BC before. It was really one of the top highlights of the trail. We took an easy pace after leaving Sombrio. The trail from Sombrio Beach to Chin Beach, which was our targeted campsite for the night, was all inland and had one huge climb. The trail would continue to be exceedingly difficult and slow going in sections, and the mud continued to be an annoyance, as did the periodic rain. but several sections of jaw-dropping scenery and more waterfalls made it all worth it. There were times when the views and scenery made us forget about the aches and pains and blisters. Times when we forgot about the miles ahead of us and could simply enjoy the amazing scenery. And then there were times when the JUAN DE FUCA seemed to be torturing us with its unrelenting ups and downs, twists and turns, always weaving in and out and never in a straight, flat line. Inches deep mud, huge tree roots, and technical terrain with every footstep that went on for hours straight with no reprieve. Times when we would curse the trail and ask ourselves why we ever thought this was a good idea. Again somewhat defeated, we arrived at Chin Beach around 4 o'clock, but we were thankful for a shorter day and celebrated being over halfway along the JUAN DE FUCA. But the 26 kilometers we'd already covered had taken a toll, leaving us blistered, wet, sore, and fatigued. It had rained off and on since we began hiking, and we were hoping for a change in fortunes for our final 2 days on the trail. On day 3, we slept in, again, uneager to start tackling the unforgiving trail on another foggy morning. We knew the section of trail we had to tackle on this day was supposed to be the most difficult, with the most amount of climbing. As we were having our breakfast and packing up, we saw a humpback whale and then a dolphin in the waters just in front of our campsite. Those sightings would turn out to be a good omen for the day ahead.
Holy mud pit. We made it to day 3. We left Chin Beach this morning and we're making our way down to Bear Beach, which according to the trail map is supposed to be the most difficult stretch of trail. We had an easier day yesterday, which was nice. We just sort of took our time. That's not to say the trail was easy, but we took our time and enjoyed the sights. Having done the West Coast Trail a few years ago, I thought I knew what I was in for, but I almost think in some ways the JUAN DE FUCA is the more difficult hike. And I know the conditions change year to year and month to month, but there's definitely been a lot more mud on the JUAN DE FUCA than I ever saw on the West Coast Trail. West Coast Trail had a lot more boardwalks and a lot more easier miles. You could just tack off along the beach. JUAN DE FUCA, we've been fighting for every kilometer. It seems like we've been going at about 2 kilometers an hour is our overall average pace. So it's really been a slog. And I wake up in the morning feeling a little bit like the Tin Man. I just need oil in all my joints just to get my body moving again in the morning. But we're having fun, I think.
When we finally hit the trail, right away there was a huge mud pit as we left Chin Beach. We thought, here we go again. But to our amazement, after that, the trail got drier and drier as we made our way towards Bear Beach, which was our desired campsite for our final night on the trail. The clouds lifted a few hours into our day, and the sun finally greeted us with full force.
This is all the result of a recent mudslide cut right across the trail.
Even though this day would be the most difficult from the standpoint of elevation gain, the improving trail conditions and sunny weather made this by far the most enjoyable day of the trek so far. We made it to Bear Beach around 4:30 in the afternoon and set up our campsite right on the beach. We were able to relax, read some books, have a fire, and enjoy an incredible sunset. What pandemic? We enjoyed our evening on the beach and wondered what our final day on the trail would bring. We woke up to perfect weather on our final day. All that was left to do was to hike the final 8 kilometers back to the China Beach trailhead, passing by the popular Mystic Beach along the way. We took our time taking in the views and soaking up our final hours on the trail.
All right, day 4. We had a lazy morning, slept in, had our coffee on the beach, and now we're making our way from Bear Beach to Mystic Beach, and then making the final trek out to the China Beach trailhead where our car is waiting for us. I think it's really been a tale of 2 hikes. The first 2 days was wet, damp, dark, and the trail conditions were pretty brutal. So much mud, just felt like every kilometer was a grind. So I don't know how much fun we were having the first 2 days, to be honest. But ever since reaching Sombrio, the trail progressively seems to be getting better and better and drier and easier and easier and more enjoyable and more enjoyable. So the last 2 days with the turn in the weather and the trail getting easier to navigate, it's been a lot more fun.
After a short break at the scenic and on this day busy Mystic Beach, we had just 2 kilometers left before we were back at our car, which would hopefully still have all its windows. As her first ever multi-day trek, Leanne would later tell me hiking the JUAN DE FUCA was one of the highlights of her year. In the moment, however, I think we were both thankful to be nearing the end of the trail and ditching our heavy backpacks. We went to the JUAN DE FUCA seeking an adventure, and the trail had delivered. Hiking the JDF was an unforgettable experience, full of highs and lows. It was a difficult 4 days, but the challenge was worth it in every way.